We gave him the pitch, and he said, how much you guys looking for? And we said, $1.5 million. And he goes, I love your energy. You remind me of me when I was your age. And we were like, great. He goes, put me down for 750. Talk to my man Jonathan. He can finish up with the details. And we were 28, 29 years old at retail, and so the board have said that we need them to have 10 million, not 1.5 million. And we're like, are you kidding me? What are you talking about? You know, and it was .com crash time. Nobody was going to give $10 million to a couple of guys with a laptop. And it was a miracle we got as far as we did. Anyway, so we never took the money. I lost 25 grand, so did Jeremy, shut the company down. What I was born to do was not work at Sky or Smith Klein Beecham or being an accountant or all the other stuff I'd done in my 20s. It was to start a business because I just loved it, if you like. And I took it on my own in 2006 and raised some seed funding, and 15 years later, here we are.
How did you
No,
see
it
that?
it lit the spark of entrepreneurship for me. But at the beginning of any journey, any startup, you need insane amounts of optimism and resilience, and like, today's gonna be amazing, we're gonna crush it today, and you have to believe that and feel it, and for some reason I do. If you don't dream, it won't happen, right? But you take one step at a time and you keep going, and it's amazing how far you can go. You enjoy the journey and the process, then the outcome will take care of itself, and it'll be probably bigger than you were expecting, but it's where the joy comes from. And actually, selling the company and making some money, that didn't give me, the money gives me zero joy.
Story, and I'm delighted to welcome Giles Palmer to the podcast.
I'm terrific. Evening all.
Mate, thanks for coming on.
You're very welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Look, we're going to dive straight in. I want to know, talk to me. So after founding Brandwatch 13 years ago, you sold like
15, yeah.
Mate, got to do my research better, and I've had a long day, mate.
Time's gone past, right, yeah.
But you sold for 450 million. I want to go back to the start of your entrepreneurial journey. Talk to me about some of the businesses you started prior to Brandwatch.
I started 2 businesses before Brandwatch. Before that, I came out of university. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I trained as an accountant. I hated that. I went into big companies. I hated that. I ended up at Sky, and I was doing deals when I was at Sky with small companies to bring them onto the Sky Interactive platform. And we were charging them Sky was charging them crazy amounts of money, but the fact that these small companies were getting these exclusive deals with Sky allowed them to raise money at high valuations. And so that was the first. I was 28, 29, and I thought, I'm on the wrong side of this negotiation. I mean, it was obviously a win-win, but they won bigger than we did. So me and a friend of mine went to the guy that was running Sky Interactive, which is now not like it was back then. This was the beginning of interactive TV, and Sky were putting a lot of money into it, and they were thinking that you would be doing your shopping through your TV and your banking through your TV. It's never really happened because now we've got smartphones and so on. So, but back then, this was their idea. What they didn't have was a retailer or a TV tailer or whatever who sold perfumes and cosmetics. So me and my friend Jeremy quit Sky. We put in quite a lot of our own money actually back then, £25,000 each. We went to the guy who was running the Sky business and said, will you give us a deal to sell perfumes and cosmetics through Sky TV? And he said yes. So he said, get some good product and raise $1.5 million and I'll give you a deal. So like I said, we put some money in. We hired some buyers, one from QVC and one from Liberty, and we hired a back-end engineer to build out the kind of the back of the store, if you like. And if we had more time, I'd tell you about some of the pitches that we did. But my friend Jeremy, who I was doing this with, he was part of the sort of, I don't know how better to describe this, it sounds wrong, but sort of the North London Jewish network, if there is such a thing. Anyway, you pull back the curtains on that group of people, and there are some very interesting people there and very wealthy. And so and they're all, a lot of them are retailers. You know, I met one guy who basically runs the world's biggest coat hanger company. They make 70% of the world's coat hangers, one company.
Wow.
And I met another guy, this guy called Bob Gergen, who we pitched to. He was running this company. He founded it and was the CEO. This company that makes 80% of the world's candles. You know, they own Wax Lyrical, and you know, pretty much 4 out of 5 candles that get burnt, this company has made. So we met these crazy people. Met a guy called Clinton Silver. What a cool name that is. He was
a cool name.
Yeah. We hired him as the non-exec chairman because he was a sort of been there, done that, ex-MD of M&S. So we met all these crazy people. Pitched Bob Gergen at Claridge's, and me and Jeremy got to Claridge's with our laptop for the demo of what we were building. And this guy goes, "Are you Giles and Jeremy?" Yeah. Mr. Gergen will be with you momentarily. Please take a seat over here. So we sat down in Claridge's, and like in this hotel we'd never been to before, and this immaculately dressed 75-year-old man, Bob Gergen, kind of walked up to us in a double-breasted pinstripe suit with a little hanky sticking out of his pocket, and when he smiled, his eyes disappeared and he looked a bit like Kermit the Frog. He was utterly charming. We gave him the pitch, and he said, "How much you guys looking for?" And we said, $1.5 million. And he goes, "I love your energy. You remind me of me when I was your age." And we were like, "Great." He goes, "Put me down for 750. Talk to my man Jonathan. He can finish up with the details." And we were 28, 29 years old, and we'd just been introduced to the world's biggest candle maker, and he was saying that he was going to put $750,000 into our company. We were just so we went straight to the pub, smoked 2 big cigars, and had drunk some pints. Thought we were Rockefeller.
Love it.
But that company was called 5 Senses, and what I realized in that period, that it was 3 months, it only lasted 3 months, because it was the end of 99. We raised the money in theory. We raised all of that 1.5 million from basically Jeremy's connections. There's more crazy stories, but I haven't got time for those. But and we got some great product. I know more about perfume cosmetics than I really should. Yeah. I can tell you, Tweezer Man are the tweezers to buy, just in case you want. I still remember all this shit, and it was 20 years ago. But I realized what we created. We had a little office just off Oxford Street. I was living in West London at the time, and the 5 of us, me, Jeremy, Helen, Kate, and Steve, we were just in there, kind of making this shit up as we went along. And there was we were loving it. It was so energizing. It didn't feel like work. It was amazing. And then we went back to Sky and said, we got the money, we got the product. And he goes, "Yeah, unfortunately, I've taken it to the Sky board." And they were like, "Who are these people?" And I said, "Well, they're the guys that used to run our business development team. What do they know about retail?" I said, "I didn't know that I thought that you didn't know that much about retail." And so the board have said, "We need them to have 10 million, not 1.5 million." And we're like, "Are you kidding me? What are you talking about?" And it was .com crash time. Nobody was going to give $10 million to a couple of guys with a laptop. And it was a miracle we got as far as we did.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we never took the money. I lost 25 grand, so did Jeremy, shut the company down. And and I realized that, you know, my heart wasn't in it. I didn't want to be a perfumes and cosmetics TV seller. That was not me. It was a goal-hanging company. I was like, oh look, there's a possible winner there. I'm just gonna, you know, try and poke it in the back of the net. And totally the wrong ethos to start a business. But I did realize that what I was born to do was not work at Sky or Smith Klein Beecham or being an accountant or all the other stuff I'd done in my 20s. It was to start a business because I just loved it. So then me and Steve, we were talking about, okay, what are we going to do next? And he was like, he was finishing his PhD at Sussex University. He said, I've got these two other mates who've just finished their PhDs. We want to build a technology company that implements open source software because we all believe in the future of software being open source. This was before the cloud, really. But we don't know anything about finance or selling. Do you want to come along and basically be run the finance and sales front of house, and we'll be the engineers? And I said, yeah, I do want to do that. So we put in 5. They all lived in Brighton. I'd never been to Brighton. So we all put in $5,000. On the 1st of April 2000, April Fool's Day, I got the train down to Brighton to meet my new business partners. I'd never met these two guys before. I like Steve, so I had some hope that he had a good judge of character. Turns out the other two were absolutely wonderful human beings. Anyway, or still are. And I got off the train behind 2 very lovely young Italian women, one of whom turned to the other, and as they were getting off the train, they went, profumi di mare, the smell of the sea, which sounds better in Italian, right? Anyway, so that was my first introduction to Brighton, an Italian woman talking about the smell of the sea, walking down to the Old Stein, where we got a little office with no windows on the Old Stein, and I met Ollie and Guillaume, who were these 2 computer scientists, and the 4 of us started the exotically named Runtime Collective Limited. And to this day, Brandwatch is still Runtime Collective Limited.
Really?
So we spent 5 years building open source software and implementing it, extending it, doing all sorts of stuff. I mean, I was doing some coding back then, but I was, I was rubbish. Well, I mean, I did some at university. I did a physics degree, but I was just not a professional software developer. So I stuck to finance and sales and customers, customer management. And we built a whole bunch of different stuff, and we made so many mistakes, but we learned what not to do when you're building software. So we spent 5 years basically training to build software, and also realizing that, what does reuse mean when you're thinking about actually putting your platform together, and so much stuff. One of the founders, Guillaume, one of the smartest guys I've ever met, used to work at the European Space Agency, was genuinely a rocket scientist, spoke 7 languages or something. He was like, I'm not cut out for this commercial stuff. So after about a year, he went back into academia. Ollie had a bit of a screw up with one project, felt a bit guilty, and he said, it cost us quite a lot of money. So he decided to sort of leave. But we had a reunion earlier this year, the 4 of us. It was wonderful. We went to a restaurant in Brighton. It was just amazing. And me and Steve carried it on for 5 years till end of 2005, early 2006. And at which point I was like, we were bored. Like we were doing software for local authorities. It was kind of dull. We were doing about 3 million a year. We didn't own the code base. It was all open source. I never really got my head around the open source business model, because I'm like, if we create the best thing in the world, then everybody else is going to use it and install it. And we've taken the cost, but we don't get the benefit. So anyway, we were dreamers. Like at the beginning, the first year, you can think about it, the name Runtime. The first year, we were all paid the same. Everybody got paid the same. And then one of the engineers came up to me at one point and said, my customers are really successful and really profitable, and that chap over there is asleep half the time, and his customers are never make any money. Why are we paid the same? And it was Animal Farm. I mean, genuinely, it was like all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And we went through the animal farming, journey with Runtime Collective. And then I want to build a product company. So in 2006, I had the idea for Brandwatch, and we'd already built a web crawler, or at least the bones of a web crawler. So we took that and turned that into. Steve wanted to go and join Google and work in their strategy team, and he almost did actually. He joined Google. He ended up at DeepMind, and now he's a VC. I mean, he's another brilliant human being, a lot like Guillaume and Ollie. And so I took it on my own in 2006. So I had some sort of co-founders, but then I sort of founded the Brandwatch thing out of Runtime Collective, if you like. And I took it on my own in 2006 and raised some seed funding. And 15 years later, here we are.
Wow. Mate, I'm really keen to just tap into the first business with the perfumes, and like you said, you stated it quite blasé, like lost 25,000.
Yeah, it's painful as hell.
But like you said, at 28, 29, that first sort of step into entrepreneurship, I guess in that sense, and you go, I've lost £25,000, but what actually that made you think was, I'm going to go and start another business. I'm going to go and...
Yeah, I'm not going to put 25 grand in again.
No.
I had a really supportive wife at the time. She'd started a wash bag business when I was a jobbing accountant, and I supported her at the beginning of that. And she was it was getting, decently successful. So £25,000 was a number for us for sure, but it wasn't like, it didn't kill us. But yeah, there were some pretty tough words said to her, by her to me about that. You fucking idiot, what are you doing? So yeah, I wasn't going to put another 25 grand in such a speculative way.
But just from your mindset point of view, because how do you view that? You view that as a failure? How did you see that? It lit the spark of entrepreneurship for me.
I realised there was one other time back in about when I was about 24, and I left the accountancy firm, and I went on to comment to Lloyd's of London, and they gave me quite a big job for a 24-year-old. I was running a team to start with 2, and then it went up to 8 people, and some of the people in that team were like, it was the best team in that whole. There were about 150 people in this project that was happening at Lloyd's, and my team of 8 was the most productive, happiest team. And a couple of the people on the team were like, whatever you do next, we want to come and work with you. And I don't say that to be arrogant. I just say that because I realized then when we did 5 Senses, that what I like doing is working with a group of people and making something, doing something, taking responsibility, and then making it happen. And one of the things that I've got, I don't know where it comes from, but I have the ability to kind of not get too worried about stuff. So I guess I'm thick-skinned, or I don't know what it is, but at the beginning of any journey, any startup, you need insane amounts of optimism and resilience, and today's gonna be amazing, we're gonna crush it today, and you have to believe that and feel it, and for some reason I do. So my partner says that it annoys her that when I get out of bed in the morning, sometimes I'm like, today's gonna be an amazing day. She's like, for God's sake, will you just calm the hell down and get me a cup of tea? So that energy of the energy of possibility, maybe, is...
So you said about being, you alluded to it a bit earlier, saying about being dreamers. You were dreamers.
I mean, I love it. And then you've
got to have a dream. You've got to build a business, to have a vision for something of this magnitude that you've built with Brandwatch. To have a vision.
If you don't dream, it won't happen, right? Everything that exists in the world that has been touched by, human beings, has started as a thought, right? So, it all starts up here, and then how does it then become manifest in reality? I don't know. Some form of weird voodoo magic, but it's the best thing in the world, isn't it? When you imagine something and then you do it, and it can be something as small as getting fit, or changing some habits, or it can be something as big as starting a business and making an impact on hundreds of people's lives. Now, you don't think that. I didn't think that at the beginning. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to start a business, and I never ever thought that it would get to where it got to. But you take one step at a time and you keep going, and it's amazing how far you can go.
Love that. And I think that's it, that everyone you talk to, and many podcasts I've done and spoke to people and podcasts I listen to, but it's not going, I'm going to climb Everest and now I've got to get to the top of that mountain. It's right, I'm going to climb Everest, but I've got to go.
You get depressed. I would get depressed because you're constantly looking up and thinking, God, I'm nowhere near it. You know?
Yeah, it's just them small steps, isn't it? Small step, everything you do is small.
Hacking your positivity or tapping into that sense of small achievements. That's why the journey is more important than the destination in anything. You got to actually enjoy the journey, the process. If you enjoy the journey and the process, then the outcome will take care of itself, and it'll be probably bigger than you were expecting. But it doesn't really matter. If it is great, if it isn't great, it doesn't matter. It's actually the process is where the joy comes from. And actually, I'm, selling the company and making some money, that didn't give me, the money gives me zero joy, or not very much. You kind of think it will.
Never money motivated when you started out, would you?
It became less of an issue over time. I was super money motivated when I was paid 35 grand a year and I had child maintenance of 700 quid a month, and I couldn't even, afford to live in much of a place that I could actually bring my kids to. That was, at that point, I was very money motivated. But then as the company got more successful and I got paid more, it became less of an issue. And so my motivation to earn more decreased at that point, really. The thing that motivated me a lot all the way through was this, obviously trying to enjoy the journey, but also this constant sense of failure and fucking up. Because every year, no matter what, something dramatic went wrong. And there were so many times with senior team members that I just, I wasn't really clicking with one or two senior team members pretty much all the way through. Different people, but if you've got a senior team of at one point I had 12 people, way too many. But let's say you've got 7. There's probably something going on in the team that's not working well. Maybe it's with you and one of the people. Maybe it's with somebody else on the team. That team is not functioning like absolutely perfect output. And if there's no conflict and everything's harmonious, that's probably not great output either. So there is almost no really great operating sort of temperature, pressure, whatever, for a team of people. It's really, I find it really, really hard and really fascinating running teams. So I was constantly thinking, oh God, why can't I get on with this person? Or why won't they do what I want them to do? Or why can't I hear what they're saying? And there was always some shit going on somewhere. And so you're firefighting the whole time. You never feel like you're winning. That's not part of the gig. But you've got to be comfortable with once you get comfortable with that, and don't lose motivation, don't lose your work ethic, then it's okay.
Because even with them challenges and them times where you're going, I'm not clicking with that person, not clicking with that, but then, like you said, alluding to the fact that they're just challenges on the way, so you still, as long as you check in with yourself that you're still enjoying that journey at some point. I'm sure there's points where
and I wasn't empathetic enough a lot of the time. I wasn't thinking what's going on for them. I didn't put myself in their shoes anywhere near as much as I should have done. I can give excuses like, oh yeah, well my job was hard and I was learning how to do it, and yeah, there's definitely some truth there, but and there was lots of decisions that we made early on that were not good decisions, and the reverberations of those decisions played out down the years. There's so much stuff that, but all of that, looking at it one way, you see, okay, those were mistakes, that was painful. Look at it another way, amazing learning opportunities, amazing that your business and the people around you and your customers and so on are helping. If you can just hear it, if you can just open yourself up to it, they're telling you what you need to do to become better at your job, to become a better person, to become just better, and that's great,
Yeah. I'm keen to growing a company to the magnitude. for over 15 years, going to 500 staff. Talk to me about the culture with it at Brandwatch. How do you, especially across different offices, how do you create because culture is the bloodline of a business, and if you've got to get a strong culture, how did you create that?
The culture of Brandwatch was set at the beginning of Runtime Collective. Like,
Really?
and it you could, I mean, it's a very different company, and you know, pretty much all the people are different, but the ethos that we had about basically looking after each other and being respectful to each other and being transparent with each other, and trying to do your best and improve and make good, honest, fact-based decisions, that persisted throughout. And even I remember one of our engineers, Tim Owen, saying to me when we took the first VC money, well, it's gonna change this place, isn't it? It's gonna, you know, now we got these sort of VCs coming in, they're probably gonna be money guys and they're gonna change this place, and you know, but it was fun while it lasted, yada yada. And I was like, well, as long as I'm still doing my job, I hope that I don't think it's going to change too much, and it didn't. The 2 points on exporting culture and creating it in different, because we had like 9 offices towards the end. Mm-hmm. The New York office was set up by one of our staff, Seb Hempstead. Now he's different to me. He's more salesy than me, which is not a bad thing. It's just all good. It's just a different flavor, right? He worked incredibly hard and did an amazing job setting up the New York office, but it had a little bit more of an edge to it, but it was still quite similar, very similar to the Brandwatch HQ culture. I hired somebody to set up our Berlin office, and that office never felt, maybe it does now, but for many years it felt at odds with the rest of the company. It was like putting 2 north magnet poles together. There was some funny, weird something in the Berlin office that was just a complete nightmare. Like, we did employee net promoter score things every quarter, and pretty much it was like mid-30s NPS throughout the whole company. Berlin -10. And it was like, what the fuck is going on? And then +20, and then -10. It's like, it's nuts, this place. What's going on? And then Stuttgart, which was set up by another Brandwatch guy, there was an engineering office, relentlessly +40 for every quarter for every year. It's so weird how and I still don't know why, other than we didn't send somebody from HQ who had a lot of our values, who shared a lot of our values and knew what it felt like to create and, you know, to be in a Brandwatch office. We didn't send somebody to set that up. We got a German guy to set it up, and it just didn't work.
That's right. It's like I find, like, from a culture point of view, like I generally talk about it a lot, because again, I always allude to the salon I closed down because I've got a culture wrong. So it's always a fascinating thing to go from. But what's interesting is knowing that the core values, I guess, that you started from, like you said, from Runtime Collective, that would be the
culture definitely scales, but the more complexity you bring into a business, the harder it is, I think. And one of the things that happens that I don't think gets talked about very much, but I think it's absolutely critical as you go from like 0 or like a couple of people to like 500 or 1,000 or more, is boundaries and accountabilities. You can't run a 500-person company anywhere like the way you run a 10-person company. You're 10-person, you're all in it together, you're in one place, the boundaries are as blurry as hell, you go for drinks together afterwards, the accountabilities are fluffy, you're just doing whatever it takes to get it done, you know, and anybody will sweep the floor kind of idea. Now, the idea that anybody will sweep the floor when you're 500 people is still good, but you need boundaries and accountabilities and who's responsible for what, because there's dependencies all over the place, and building those boundaries into an organization and holding people to account, not in a brutal way, but in a completely professional way, is a learnt behavior. Certainly was for me. And also and it was only when we got acquired and I watched people who are really good at that, I realized how shit I was at it, actually. I was like, God, the CEO and the CFO of Cision are really good at accountabilities and being clear and holding their execs to account, but they're doing it in a professional way, supportive way, but very clear. And I was like, God, I wish I'd seen that a few years ago, because I was just super fluffy on that stuff, really.
But still built an amazing company that's done amazing things to get. So that's part of that, like you said, part of that journey and that learning curve for you, I guess.
I mean, I was there throughout, but it wasn't just me that built it, clearly. I'll take a 500th of the credit for the last year. You know what I mean? It's a group, it's a team game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, talk to me about, like I say, growing that company to that magnitude again over a 15-year period. Talk to me about the challenges. What challenges in that? And I guess raising money as well. Like from the start, you almost got, and then going into VC as well. That brings its own challenges, I'm assuming.
Well, the first VC round we did was in 2012. So I was pitching February 2012. So I was pitching from about October 11. I didn't know anything about raising VC money apart from Bob Gergen. I'd never had raised money from anybody ever, and Bob was a pushover, it turns out. I got the VC handbook, which is like this, for a list of VCs, and I started thinking, where do I start here? I started calling around, getting in touch with a few. Actually, the angel funding was the most. So I'll come back to the VCs. We'd already raised £1 million in 2 seed rounds, because what we had to build with this massive infrastructure to process all this data that we were collecting was very expensive. We couldn't do it off, without raising quite a lot of money. So I filled out a form for Oxford Business Angels pitch day. So I filled out the form with the idea of Brandwatch. We hadn't even created an MVP at this point. I had some sketches and an idea, and we'd started building it. We had the search engine. We had half of it, probably. Anyway, I filled out this form, and this bloke, Jason, called me up and said, okay, but we did have a bit of annuity revenue from our old customers from the Runtime Collective days. So it was a little bit of a sort of pivot moment in the company's history. So, but I could see we were going to need money. Anyway, so I filled out this form. This bloke called Jason Bull from London C Capital called me up and said, yeah, I'm going to invite you to a pitch day. So I had to go on a 1-day course to learn how to pitch effectively to this group. And it was a room a bit like this, with about 80, as far as I'm aware, high net worth individuals, business angels. And me and Fabrice Rakowski, who's the CTO, basically pitched Brandwatch to them. And at least 10 of them were asleep during my pitch. I noticed none of you are, which is a massive upgrade on that audience. So thank you very much. Good work. So we were one of 7 companies that pitched. We had like 15 minutes. And then after the pitch, just like this, you had a little booth and people would come up and talk to you about your company. And then whatever we raised from those angels, London C Capital, which was a government-backed fund, would match. So the guys who started Spannerworks and sold it to iCrossing, Joe Ghosh and Ray Richards, and Anthony Mayfield and Dean Harvey and Neil Han, I can't remember, Jaya Singh, I think is his name. They collectively, I knew them, they're Brighton guys, and they were into the idea of Brandwatch. I discussed it with them. They'd made some money from their sales, so basically they put in about 100 grand between them. I got another 150 from the angel pitches, and then London Seed Capital put in 250,000. So we had 500,000 in seed capital from that first angel pitch, and then I raised another seed round. Basically, some of those guys followed on, and then a wealthy friend of mine put in a £250,000. And so we raised that money from individuals, but it didn't feel like, those people weren't really, well, my friend who put in 250, he was like our non-exec chairman. He was like my mentor, and he was super helpful. But the rest of them were like just silent investors. They all made 30 times their money, which is really good news. But it took a while. Anyway, so the first time we went to VCs, it was a different sort of thing. These are professional investors. They represent funds. It's a different process. So I learnt slowly, but I kind of got into that process. It helped being an accountant because I could be fluent on the numbers. And I
guess that's what they, like from a VC, is that mainly what they focus on? That
and the storytelling, the credibility, and the team and the traction. If you're a decent storyteller and you've got good numbers, you'll be fine.
Yeah, fair play. I want to talk about. I'm intrigued to see your mindset around. So, because most entrepreneurial dream, I guess, is to start an idea, build a business, get it to a valuation, you sell it for $450 million.
I call it a ponycorn. A unicorn. A half a unicorn. Ponycorn. It's cuter than a unicorn.
Like, do you get to that point? Like, where's your mindset at last year when you sold it? Is it a euphoric moment? Are you like, wow?
It was. There's a couple of things. The reason why we sold. Well, we had some inbound inquiries. That's the third time it had happened in the life of the company, and I'd done 15 years. I was like, it starts to get. One of the reasons why we did some mad stuff, like acquired our biggest competitor and integrated technologies, because it does get. I get bored reasonably too quickly, and so we used to throw in risks and new stuff to do because it was more, it kept it interesting, right? Yeah. But the market that we were operating in was probably only $1 billion, and so we were already over 10% of the market. So the big growth was going to tail off, right? We were not going to be able to continue to grow super quickly unless we made some other strategic sort of changes. So it felt like we probably needed to be part of a bigger software company, and that's like, you just look at software and what happens is that they just roll up bigger. You don't get software companies getting smaller and being successful. It's very weird. Anyway, I kind of thought, okay, at some point we got to sell the company. Plus we had investors, and investors at some point want their money back, right? Times a big number if possible. So exit planning was definitely a thing. It was definitely something that we were thinking about. Right. And then it was like these inbound inquiries came. It was like, okay, let's run a process. I put a target of 450 million on it, and actually it was 80, and we got that 80% cash, 20% stock. And I think the stock that we got in Cision is going to, hopefully make it good returns. So hopefully it'll be more than that. But we put that target on it, and for me as the founder, it felt like I've written the last chapter of that particular book, and so it just was like, that's good. But not much more than that. I mean, we did celebrate, obviously, but it was more of a feeling of like, I'm glad we got to write the last chapter.
Amazing, and what a great way to, I guess, to get to that point where you go. Because we want to build something, but to actually be okay with that, I've written a final chapter. I can close the book on that, I guess, and look for whatever it is that next journey or that next chapter for you, I guess. Yeah. Which is, I'm keen to what does the future hold?
I don't know. I'm actually interviewing for a couple of CEO jobs at the moment, and if they're jobs that I think are really interesting and fun, and they want to give them, they think I'm good for it, then maybe that. I was actually speaking to a guy today about on one of them, and I said, I'm reminded of when Steve Redgrave got out of, was interviewed after one of the Olympics, the commentator was like, "How are you feeling? You've just won a gold medal. How are you feeling?" And he said, "Don't ever let me get in this fucking boat ever again." But a year later, he was back training and he did another Olympics. So I've that's the mindset that I've sort of found myself in, which is that I've done my 10,000 hours. I feel like I'm better at it than I was like 10 years ago, and I want to win another race, sort of thing. I mean, it's not quite as simple as that, but I feel so. I'm exploring some of that stuff. I've got 3 or 4 non-exec things that I'm working on, young founders in particular who are like 5 to 10 million and are looking to grow, and often with software businesses, SaaS businesses in particular, which is what Brandwatch is, on a commercial basis. Well, actually, from a business, the CEO, the qualities of the CEO definitely show up in the business. I've seen this with the ones I'm working with, and so there's a couple where the products are really good, but they're not really good at selling because the CEOs are a little bit academic, or they're not salespeople. And then I'm working with another one, and the CEO's a magnificent salesperson, like all about selling, but there's just carnage, or not so much carnage, but there's a lot of stuff that has not been taken care of in terms of the product and the onboarding and all sorts of other stuff. So my job with these guys is to try and help them up their game in the areas that they're weak. Because as a CEO, you have to be somewhat of a generalist, right? If you're really weak in one area, it's a bit of a problem. So when I started doing that, like sort of mentoring non-exec stuff, I started about 18 months ago, just after we sold, actually, in March last year. And I wasn't very good because I was used to having responsibility and accountability, and it's like, right, you just need to do this. I'm like, no, stop telling him what to do. Explore it. So now I'd give myself a 7 out of 10 on that stuff, but I was probably a 4 when I started.
Wow, amazing. Well, look, mate, what a fascinating journey, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. And just unbelievable to think of. I think as someone that's in the start of my journey, I guess, I've run different businesses, some work not, and in that start, but just to speak.
Me too.
and the things we learn from that. I think for me, the great thing about one of the things that many people know how much I love the podcast and sitting and speaking to inspirational people like yourself, and obviously Rachel coming earlier, and just I truly believe everyone's got a story to tell, and whatever part of that journey you're on, we're always there. But to listen to someone that started something, built it 15 years later, sold it for that amazing amount of money, but listen to you talk, it seems like you've enjoyed the journey, and I think that's
mostly. and also, I look back at it, and there aren't that many things that I feel ashamed of. And I just think about my behavior or something I did and think, oh God, I wish I could. That's really embarrassing. There's not that many of those, and that is a relief, actually, because I can talk about it freely. And there's some people that I will have pissed off along the way, and vice versa. But mostly, I've just got lots of lifelong friends and lots of just joyful and hard memories, as it were. We went through some hard stuff together, and you build such a strong bond with the people that you go through that with, and it's a massive privilege.
Amazing. Well, look, we're gonna wrap up with our quick fire questions that I've been pinging at everyone today. Right. So, first one piece of advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Move to Silicon Valley. Back then, I mean, I was 18 in 1987. What a great time to move to San Francisco. So yeah.
Okay. Who has been the biggest inspiration throughout your life and why?
Ooh. I think I don't know. I think lots of different people in different ways. I don't have a single sort of role model, or I mean, my dad was a massive influence on me, obviously, and my mom, but my dad in particular, he died in 2008, so he hasn't been around for he died before we got Brandwatch started to get going. It's a real sadness, because I remember one of his mates came up to me the other day, about a year ago, and he goes, you know, amazing, Giles, amazing work, you know, well done, mate. And I said, thanks, Jem. He goes, yeah, because your dad never really thought you'd amount to much. He goes, yeah, I remember him saying to me, I'm a bit worried about Giles. He's a nice guy, but I don't think he's really got much lead in his pencil. I'm not worried about him. and that I think at 18, 19, that is totally fair enough, actually. But yeah, I mean, I went.
He's looking there now.
I had to go through some
he's done all right. He's
done all right. Yeah. Did all right in the end, Dad. There we go.
Brilliant. Could you recommend a book or podcast to
has
had an impact on you?
I read this question earlier on. So, and again, I don't have one, but if I like listening to business books, I like reading fiction and listening to business books. So, if I look at my Audible thing, I'm listening to How the World Really Works right now, which is quite good. The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. I've told Alex about this. It's just come up here. It's a really good book for startups who are maturing into being scale-ups and want to figure out how to implement strategy. There are other good strategic frameworks, but I used to get asked from about 2008 to 2010, what's our strategy, pretty much every month. I'm like, well, I've told you what it is. What bit don't you understand? And it wasn't until I realized that actually a strategy is a lot more than just saying, okay, this is where we're going. It's actually how you're going to get there, how you're going to succeed. And you really need a good framework, because you don't want to invent that shit yourself. There's no point. So that one was good. I read a book called Ishmael the other day, which is amazing. It's about a gorilla talking to a guy, and that's about sustainability. Super interesting. Build It is a really good book by Glenn Elliott, who started Reward Gateway, about culture, building culture, and rewarding people and recognizing people. And I'll just give you one more. Midlife and the Great Unknown. There we go. That's a bit more philosophical. David White, super interesting book.
Amazing. Thank you. And look, finally, what is your one rule for living a fulfilled life?
It's just the golden rule, really. Just treat other people how you want to be treated. I have one for me specifically, which is try to be more thoughtful. I'm not naturally a very thoughtful person. I'm good at some things, but my partner is incredibly thoughtful, and I frustrate her that I'm not as thoughtful as her. And so, but it's like, I'm good at maths and she's shit at maths, so it's hard work for her to do maths. And I'm like, you know, so when
we've all got our strengths.
Yeah, turn that maths me, thoughtful you. It's hard for me to be as thoughtful as you. You're just better at it than me. I'm trying. So that's one thing that I constantly try and work on.
Amazing. Mate, listen, thank you so much for your time and coming on. Like I said, what a brilliant story, and I think that deserves a round of applause. Thank you, sir. Just quickly, have we got any questions in the room? Rachel.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Please. Sack yourself? Okay. Do it. Okay. So you can coach and get people in who can show you what good accountability meetings look like. You can ask people if they want to mature and develop in that way. And if they don't, and you can't repurpose them in the organization, you're doing them a favor, because the company's only going one way, right? The organization is growing, it's only going to go one way. If they think they can do that, that's often the problem. Well, then that's easy. Reach their skill level and they can't do the job. Okay, well, but again, that not doing their job and not being accountable is slightly different, okay? That's a capability or I'm searching for the right word, but it's a capability issue, not an accountability issue. They're not up to the scale of the role that they're in right now. So, and they will know this, right? They will know that they are failing, and they're stressed. They're finding it very stressful, and they're working harder and harder and harder. The analogy that I use, and we had it the whole time. I had it with myself, and I had it with other people. That some of the time you're on the wave and you're surfing and it's all good and you can do some tricks. Other time the wave is going a little bit too fast and you're really struggling to keep up with it. And at that point you've got to upgrade yourself, and that takes a shit ton of work. And if you can do that, then great, you can get back on the wave. If not, then you've got to allow the next person who's going to be better at surfing that wave to get on it and do the job, for your own sake and for the company's sake. And I think that's where non-execs and advisors can come in and be helpful, actually. Because to me, that's just ruthless. No, it's not. No, it's not ruthless at all. No, it's not. It's actually the opposite of ruthless. It's incredibly compassionate. Because if you don't do that, their life is going to become more and more miserable. It is actually a very compassionate act. What's your second question? Yes. I've never met a successful person that doesn't create a whole visualization. I mean, visualization means different things to different people. We visualized in numbers. I visualized in what the product would actually look like. We visualized what does a customer, what does a good customer interaction look like? What does great employee engagement look like? So there were lots of there's some detail around what visualization means in those specific areas. But for sure, we took everything that was important and we planned it. And part of planning is to kind of like, okay, where are we going? How is this going to look like? I am a visual person and I like sketching things out. So I love to sketch out what the product was, how it was going to look and what we were going to build. I found that a lot of fun, and it also helped me explain and work with the product team and the engineers. I'm like, okay, this is what we want. That's what I want. Over time, I did less of that because you've got a head of product, and if you do that, they're like, will you fuck off out of my department, please? Which is completely fair enough. And that's another thing with accountabilities, actually, and boundaries. If you have to stop doing stuff as well. Otherwise, it gets blurry, and you can't hold somebody else to account if you're doing not just the work, but the thinking and the planning for them. So there's a lot in there. There's a lot to unpack about putting boundaries and accountabilities in. It's not easy. I know. Because when is the right time? There isn't a time. It's an evolution, and you get to a point where it's just super painful not to do it, and everybody's stressed out, and everybody's getting burnt out, and yeah, I've got my own kind of theories about burnout, but it's incredibly important as you scale.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Sir. Go for it.
Yeah, of course, but I don't think it's got much to do with a physical thing. I think it maybe manifests as physical, but I think it's nearly all emotional. And so why? What's going on there? Why are you not happy? What are you struggling with? What are these things that keep coming up again and again and again? You're incredibly frustrated and you're blocked. And then you go, I'm just exhausted. So the physical manifestation is the symptom, but it's not the cause in my view. Most of the time.
Cool. Mate, thank you so much. One more round of applause, please. Giles Palmer, everybody. Thank you. This is the County Business Talks podcast, produced by H2 Productions.